After Solo Leveling's intro, you're all probably wondering, what happened to Jinwoo? Is he a monster? Is he a human? Is he an angel? Even his girlfriend can't smell a stinky stench from him, unlike a regular hunter. So can Sung Jinwoo beat the allegation that he isn't the destined one, unlike every other shonen character? Is the answer A? No, he is built different. B, he has the Demon King inside of him. C, he has a monarch inside, which of course is totally different from a Demon King. Or D, well, it's all of it. Jinwoo is the vessel chosen by the most powerful being in existence. The angelic greatest fragment of brilliant light. The king of dead. The shadow monarch himself. Ashborn. Right from the moment he died, Ashborn came and said arise. He selected Jinwoo, a suitable host to unlock his broken powers into. Until, well, he would take over the boy's body when he reached level 100. Jinwoo's fate began thousands of years before he even existed. Back when a deity called the Absolute Being ruled the world alone, where light and darkness was all that existed. But once Bro got bored, he split it apart, creating two races, with 8 emissaries made out of the fragments of light, and 8 monarchs made out of the darkness. The emissaries are pretty much like angels, loyal and subservient to the creator, with the sole purpose to protect the world, whilst the monarchs can be seen as demons, made to destroy the world. However, this means that the two races are in a constant, never-ending war. The angels had their army made up of silver knights, whilst the monarch, being kings of the respective field, had theirs who were known as denizens of chaos, basically all of the magical beasts we see in the dungeon. So eons later, getting tired of war, the angels pleaded to the Absolute Being for help, only to be ignored. Now, if any of you have been left on red, or your DMs have been aired, then you can relate to these guys.
Bro, please, bro. Why are you doing?
They started losing their shit. More importantly, they realized that the Absolute Being just wanted them to fight and watch this chaos for his amusement. So the angels staged a coup to kill him. Now, if you're wondering how someone can kill their maker, yeah, well, you know how AI is gonna doom us all and kill its creators? Well, it's the same concept here. But honestly, you know what I'm thinking. Bleach Soul King rings a bell?
He copied my whole flow!
In fact, after killing him, these angels changed their title to become rulers, and then used tools containing fragments of the Absolute Being's power to hunt down the monarchs, and were even able to capture one of the giant monarchs alive, tipping the tide of war in their favor, giving them a solid shot towards victory. However, amongst the angels, one stood in their way: Ashborn. He was still loyal to his creator and fought against his own kind, leading to his death. But since he had been so loyal, the Absolute Being had placed the fail switch into him, rewarding Ashborn with a power beyond anyone's imagination: the ability to rule over the territory called death. Now, if you're questioning why the heck did an Absolute Being just do that to himself, well, listen, he's not all powerful like most depiction of a creator is. He's like, a human being that invented a nuke. He can't be the nuke, but he can use the nuke, and he can give other people to use the nuke. In this case, Ashborn, who had just become more powerful than any ruler or any monarch. After reviving as an undead, Ashborn mourned the death of his master by ripping out his wings, to then cloaking himself in shadow. In pursuit for revenge, Ashborn proceeded to build his shadow army using the dead denizens of the Chaos World, along with some of the Silver Soldiers. This is when he took his title as a monarch, joining the other 7 in their goals to defeat the rulers. However, the dark side was even better at the art of betrayal. Yep, these bozos, instead of choosing victory over a eons-long war, decided to stab him in the back. Well, at least 2 of them did. This was because after seeing Ashborn's ability, they were like, damn, no man alone should have this much power. This led to Ashborn getting ganked, but that didn't do much because he ended up killing one of them, weakening the monarchs heavily. But with Ashborn's shadow army in ruins, he was put at death's doors once again by the rulers. However, this time around, they didn't kill him. Rather, they requested forgiveness, asking Ashborn to stop fighting them. After all, they were all made from the same cloth. Ashbourne reluctantly agreed and decided to go into hiding. With the monarchs on the back foot, the rulers became confident in their victory. Little did they know that the monarchs were plotting their revenge, choosing to bide their time and launch another war on a new battlefield, Earth. The rulers couldn't just sit by, of course, and after a couple of redos using some godly hacks, they decided to reset time 10 years back and let humans borrow their power whilst the monarchs started to possess them completely. However, mind you, along with Ashbourne, the most powerful and oldest Antares, the king of dragons and the monarch of destruction, couldn't find a host on Earth to hold them. And since neither of these divine beings could exist as themselves on Earth, the Shadow Monarch had to find a human suitable as a vessel. However, this couldn't be any random person. After all, Ashbourne was the most powerful, who controlled the domain of death itself. Such immense strength would break someone's body and soul apart. So, Ashbourne is approached by a mage known as the Architect, who had the means to do what Ashbourne needed: find a human capable of holding his power. Thus, they struck a deal. The Architect would ensure to create a game-like system to help the host gradually get stronger through their mind, body and soul. This concept was actually inspired by the angels who had opened dungeons on Earth so that the humans that were chosen to be hunters could train and be prepared for the oncoming threat of the monarchs. But the Architect, rather than applying it to the human species as a whole, he applied it specifically to one individual, Sun Jingwu. This is why the system had levels that kept on testing and improving all kinds of abilities of the chosen human, giving Jinwu access to parts of the Shadow Monarch's power level by level. Ashbourne promised the Architect that he would grant him immortality for the help once he had taken over that human's body. However, when Jinwu crossed level 100, that did not happen, and there's a huge reason behind it. But first, you might be wondering, ABD, why was Jinwu even chosen? I mean, he was known as the weakest hunter in the world. His body wasn't strong, neither did he have any impressive magical talent. Yeah, that's pretty sad. When we think about it, Jinwu was the most unsuitable person for this job, going against all criterias. Even the rulers carefully selected humans with huge pool of talent and strength to make them hunters, such as Chairman Go Gun Hee. Then why Jinwu? Well, the answer lies in the fact that the Shadow Monarch is also the king of death. Being the weakest hunter in existence, Jinwu was someone who had experienced death up close the most, more than anyone else on Earth. Since he barely had any skills, he was expected to die anytime and in any dungeon. Despite that, he had survived for an incredibly long time based on his sheer will to live and achieve his goals. Even though Jinwu saw himself as the most useless hunter, he kept going on raids, risking his life day in and day out just so his sister could go to college and his mother's hospital bill could be taken care of. What a good boy. Therefore, he had what most humans lack: a strong mentality. Moreover, Jinwu might not have the physical skill to show for it, but he possessed a massive amount of intellect. Just think about it. During the first double dungeon, not only did he remain calm instead of the strongest hunters on the raid, but he also managed to crack the code to survive. If we consider the powers of Ashbourne, most of them, including his most OP Shadow, can only be used effectively when the user is smart and capable of thinking on his feet. For example, in the Demon Castle, Jinwu needs to scour entire cities worth of space to find monsters that drops entry permit for him to progress. So he chooses to divide his army. He creates 6 units led by his most powerful and competent shadows to search the area for him. Like, boy, this helped him climb the tower faster than Chahain was trying to climb his. In a war where you have to command units, it's not physical strength that matters, but your big brain. However, was simply defying death really enough of a reason to justify just how hard the system was working to keep Jinwu alive? No, of course not. During his fight with Cerberus, Jinwu noticed that as he is put in danger, the system will activate abilities like tenacity in order to ensure he can keep going. In fact, the system sets up quests to push him into making choices that leads him overcoming difficult situations, like killing a human for the first time when he was in danger. Well, the effort of the system starts making a lot more sense when we begin learning about Ashbourne. Ashborn. Specifically, we can look back at the moment where Jinwoo was chosen. In the double dungeon, it was Jinwoo who solved each riddle associated with the commandments and managed to keep the others alive. It was Jinwoo's ingenuity and ability to keep calm when facing death that allowed him to finally be helpful on a raid. However, regardless of how useful he was, the others hunters still betrayed and abandoned him on the altar. This is exactly the same as Ashborn joining the monarchs and trying to help them stop the rulers, only to be betrayed by those he saved when the beast and the white flame monarch turned on him. Furthermore, in his fight with Kasaka, Jinwoo came face to face with his own weakness and began to understand how his powerlessness allowed those around him to betray him. He started to believe that if he could become more powerful, then he would never be betrayed again, a mindset that Ashborn definitely understood. The system was going out of his way to keep Jinwoo alive because he was the perfect candidate to Ashborn, someone who shared the same fears, mentality and aspirations in a way that stronger hunters could never understand. Later, when he is tested by the architect, Jinwoo is shown visions of Ashborn's past, and as he and the Shadow Monarch began to sync with each other, a black heart emerges in Jinwoo's chest. Originally, this was supposed to be the moment where Ashborn takes over Jinwoo's body. However, I don't believe that he actually wanted that. The reason being that the black heart was the prerequisite to activating a hidden skill within the system. Like, why would Jinwoo still keep gaining levels and skills after level 100 if the plan was for Ashborn to take over by then? Well, because Ashborn never intended to revive. The system was created in a way where even after the architect died, it would keep on working. The only reason for this would be that the power source for it was Ashborn himself, and his will had taken over it. Ever since the betrayals, Ashborn had become completely aimless, especially after the angels had apologized. Ashborn didn't know his purpose and lost his desire to keep on living. So instead, he sees Jinwoo not as a vessel, but as a successor. However, this was not a fate that he wanted to force on Jinwoo, and this is where the hidden skill comes in. When Jinwoo eventually gets killed by the Frost and Beast monarch, he creates an illusionary world where he wakes up in the past, right after the double dungeon. This time though, he keeps all 146 levels, skills, item and knowledge of the future. It's an opportunity for him to live forever in a perfect dream, but eventually he is confronted by Ashborn and is given a choice. He can either stay here or be reborn into the real world, continuing the fight. Ultimately, Jinwoo chooses to resurrect himself by saying, "Arise!" He then truly becomes the Shadow Monarch. This might sound familiar because Ashborn was also killed before realizing his ability to resurrect himself as the Shadow Monarch. Now that Jinwoo had become the true monarch, he gained access to all of Ashborn's ability as well as his shadow army, and by making use of those, he managed to finally take down Antares, the monarch of destruction, leading to the rulers rewarding him with a wish, where Jinwoo chooses to turn back time and have the rulers never come to Earth. With the powers he had gained now, he planned to take on the monarchs by himself so that the rulers and the gates would not be necessary. However, after he succeeds in defeating the monarchs again, he finds himself in a very interesting position, being an all-powerful deity like Shadow Monarch in a world with no need of him. And so, just like Ashborn before him, he begins questioning his place in the world. But Jinwoo had something that Ashborn never did, and chooses to stick around with the people he loves, and of course ones who love him, like Cha Hain and his family, which leads him in his own successor in his son, Song Soo-hoo. If you guys enjoyed this video and wanted to cover more solo leveling, then smash the like button, ding the notification bell, and don't forget to watch this video next where you can learn about every time Jinwoo leveled up.